good afternoon. Hello, Lyndall Fraker here again with Marshfield Old School Times. This is our first remote Old School Times podcast, and what an honor. What an honor to have a man that's been around Marshfield all of his life, and as I mentioned in the introduction that on Facebook, one of the nicest guys you'd ever meet, Tom Barnes. Tom, welcome. Welcome to our show. Absolutely. Glad to have you here with us today, and thanks for inviting us into your home. We'll see how this works. Now, any of you out there that are watching, if you wouldn't mind, send a text message to my phone. Logan is with me, a producer over here, and he'll check the messages. If you can't hear us or we need to adjust something, let us know. We've done a little testing this afternoon. That's why we're just a few minutes late. We hope we can get it all just right. But again, we're just so happy to have Tom with us. Tom's had some health issues, and he's recovering now quite well, and so we're just glad to be able to do this today. We've missed about the last 3 weeks, quite frankly. We haven't been on with our show. Just been a busy time in the month of May with Logan's graduation and some other family events. But we're glad to be back, and we're so glad to be here at Tom's today. So Tom, we're going to just get this started. And of course, the way this works, I'll just ask a few questions and kind of trigger some of those memories in your head. And I know you've got a lot of great stories, and you've lived a wonderful life here in Marshfield. So let's just start where we always do. When did you come to America?
March 20th, 1942.
Okay.
And in Springfield, I was born in Springfield. And I almost didn't make it. My mom and dad owned a restaurant on the square, Marshfield Cafe, and we had a girl there working, Effie Eiler. Well, they went to Springfield and got to Northview Hill and forgot to tell Effie to close up the cafe. That was my birthday.
So now Effie was Ralph's wife, right?
Yes.
And of course, Ralph Eiler Field, the ball field over at
Yes.
the school. Ralph was instrumental in building that field physically with labor. He was out there with a shovel and a rake, and was just a real supporter of the school sports. And so Effie worked for him. That's interesting, because I've heard my dad tell a story very similar to that. When I was born, and this isn't about me, but it's a great correlation. They got to Northview, and my mom she said, "Don, you need to hurry." I happened to be a breech baby, so I came really fast. But anyway, got to Northview, and my dad forgot his wallet, and he told Mom, "I've got to have money." Of course, you didn't have credit cards or anything back then.
Cell phone.
And so he turned around and went back to Marshfield to get his wallet, and I think my mom about had the baby, but she made it. They made
Good
it.
story.
So where was the Marshfield Cafe?
It was where next to the sweet shop.
Okay, over on the corner, kind of, or
on the other side.
Other side. So
on the north side.
So you had the corner, which Ruth's Flowers, and then the Ruth's Flower building. It was the sweet shop, right?
Yes.
The one next to it, and then the Marshfield Cafe.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're going to get into a little bit about your folks. Matter of fact, go ahead and tell about George and Jean and your brothers and sisters and so forth.
Okay. I had a brother and a sister,
Mm-hmm.
and Robert passed away about 8 years ago. And Kitty Mannery, Mary Catherine, is still around.
Mm-hmm.
She's doing pretty good. She's in a care center in Springfield, and has been a really good sister. I love her. And John Mannery died about 2 or 3 months ago.
Not very long ago, yeah. And of course, a lot of people knew Kitty and John and their kids in school and so forth. And
Mark and Matt and David.
Yep.
But,
Now, where did you fall? Were you the oldest or the?
I'm middle.
You're in the middle. Okay.
Yeah. Kitty's younger.
Kitty's younger, and Robert was older.
Yes.
Okay. And I went to school with Robert's daughter, Leanne. We were in the same class, And then your folks, George and Jean. Now, you said where was it you lived when you grew up?
Maple Street.
On Maple Street. Lot of kids grew up on Maple Street in those
That's
days,
right,
wasn't there?
That's right. My mom told me that there was 13 kids lived in the same block as we did,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
nobody had grass in their yard. We didn't have to mow yards.
Yeah.
Wore down.
And my mother grew up on Maple Street as well, and of course she was a little older than you, her and her siblings, but I know they all lived there when they all graduated from high school in the 50s. So,
Yes.
yeah, that was a great street, of course. So your folks now, were they were already in the cafe business? Had they been in the cafe business pretty much their whole working career?
Yeah. Well, Dad worked in a cafe.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the same one when he was like 14 years old, and anyway, all those years, it moved. There was Johnny Andrews on the square,
Mm-hmm.
and Sweet Shop, and Marshfield Cafe, and it was a good time.
Yes.
Really good time.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, later on, they moved out to the golf course, right? Did they run it for a while?
Skyline.
The Skyline Cafe. Uh-huh.
Yeah. There's an airport out there, and
Mm-hmm.
a golf course, 9-hole,
Mm-hmm.
sand greens. Didn't have the grassy greens.
Yeah.
And in fact, I used to rake the greens, and that's when you take a rake and you rake it,
Smooth them out.
smooth them out.
So was the golf course, the 9-hole, was it over on the same side as the clubhouse?
No.
It was over on the side where it is now,
Yeah, it's on the west side.
or on the west side.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I meant. The old cafe. It was there on that side.
Yeah.
And was the airport there too, or was?
Yes.
It was too. The strip.
Planes used to come in from the north, right over the highway,
Okay.
and land on that. That was hole number 1 and number 9. So
Now, when do you think that they when did they build the new golf course? About any idea? And then did away with it. Did they do it at the airstrip about the same time they built the new?
well, Herman Pierce had the golf course
Mm-hmm.
area, and it was also a airport.
Mm-hmm.
So the airport and golf course. Anyway, I think that when they built the new highway,
Mm-hmm.
I-44, that was going on at the same time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We didn't know what was going on out there in the country where they was building the new
Right.
highway.
Yeah. That'd have been the late 50s.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it would have been. And well, what was I going to say?
The golf course moved to the other side or something
Yeah.
about that time.
Yeah,
But then, of course, but the cafe continued to operate, and your mom and dad, I guess, operated it
yeah.
until they moved to the Spur.
Yeah, and
Okay.
that was on
That was old Route 66.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And one thing I remember about that was we had a guy that was from St. Louis, and he had a covered wagon, and he came down Route 66 every year. He had goats, he had dogs, he had on this covered wagon. And it's just special in my mind. He sold postcards for a living, I guess. So we would buy postcards and sell them.
Uh-huh.
That's a good remembrance.
Did he pull the wagon with a pickup or what?
Mules.
Oh, he actually pulled it with mules.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Huh.
Not many people would remember that.
Yeah. That's a great story.
Yeah.
So, of course, when they first built the new highway, it became Route 66. It wasn't initially 44. They bypassed.
Right. Yeah.
So, and is that about the time then they built the new Spur Cafe? And did your folks
Yes.
build it or build the cafe?
Bob Flores built it.
Yeah.
And,
For them, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the Larry Wallen,
Okay.
those guys, I think owned it before we did.
I see.
And then we bought it from them, and then the Spur Cafe came out of that.
Yes.
And I remember I was probably 10 years old
Okay.
by then.
Yeah.
I used to ride my bicycle to the spur,
Mm-hmm.
and my mom would call, well, we're out of bread, so if you go get bread. So I go to Young's.
Yeah.
Leslie would be at the counter. I'd go back and hold up a loaf of bread, and she'd write it down.
Yeah.
And
Now, there wasn't much between Young's and the Spur Cafe then, was there, on the
No,
Spur? That
no.
would have been pretty,
yeah.
kind of a new road connecting
Well,
them,
I
I guess.
remember when they poured it, it was probably 12 inches thick.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Conoco Station was there.
Mm-hmm.
Later, when I was working, I'd go see Noah, go get gas,
Mm-hmm.
and Leon and Noah was there,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd pull up and get my gas, wave at them.
They'd write it down.
They'd write it down.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's how I
Little
got my
ticket
gas.
book.
I did that for 10 years.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to your childhood again for a minute. So the siblings, your brother and sister, and you all were fairly close in age, weren't you? You weren't really
3
spread.
years.
Yeah,
Two or 3 years.
three spread. So you
Kitty
weren't.
and I 2 years. Robert,
Yeah.
3.
Yeah. So you said you played on Maple Street. I guess y'all probably went to church somewhere in town or something.
We
And
was the Methodist church.
Methodist church, okay, yeah, and which was just up the street, and I'm sure you walked a lot. Walked to the school, of course.
Yeah.
Of course, the school was all 12 grades were in the building that we have
Right.
there.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I guess all the action was on the square. You'd go to the movie theater, I'm assuming, and cafes, and
Everything was on the square.
everything was on the square.
Popcorn was 10 cents.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the man that had the gas station at the Spur, he had real big hands, and he couldn't get his hands in the popcorn bag.
Oh, no.
And that was the problem that I didn't have.
Isn't that funny, a memory that you had? I mean, you
Yeah.
can remember things like that. It was unique, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was unique.
And Steve Brooks's dad and mom ran the
Yes. Charles.
Charles.
Uh-huh.
And they were also Methodist. And I went to school with Steve. He's not around now.
Yeah.
Janet Pierce,
Mm-hmm. Herman's daughter.
Herman's
Yeah.
daughter. Sue McFadden.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the kids that were in my class, they were all Methodist.
Yeah.
I think I had a good a childhood as anybody. Marshfield. I love Marshfield. I always felt like it was the best place on earth to live.
Yeah.
And I moved away for 17 years and moved back because of that. I wanted to raise my kids in a small town.
Yeah.
So I know who the parents were.
Sure. You know, I hear that a lot. I feel that way myself. Now, you graduated in 1960.
Yeah.
Of course, I graduated in 1977. But I think anyone in that time frame, in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, would say that same thing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the ones beyond or since then. But I've had many guests that have said the same thing on our show. Tom Farr Jr. and people like that, Dr. Todd, and
Right.
that grew up and spent all their whole lives in Marshfield. You know?
Yeah. Well, I'd ride to town on my bike and
Mm-hmm.
go uptown, get a haircut by myself. And I wasn't even 8 years old.
Yeah. Now, was Mary's Variety there yet?
Yes.
They were. Okay. I couldn't remember when they started, but
You could buy all the candy you'd want for a nickel.
yeah, yeah.
And that's where I was headed, Mary's.
And there were a lot of cafes, wasn't there? I mean, off the square.
Grocery
and,
stores.
yeah, grocery stores, 3 or 4 grocery stores on the
Yeah.
square, and yeah, those were great times, absolutely. So you graduated in 1960, then you said you moved away. Did you get married soon, or did you wait a while?
I married when I was 25.
25, okay.
So, and I married a young girl
Yeah.
from St. Joseph. So,
Okay. Uh-huh.
And I got out of high school, went to college for a year to SMS, and then I quit and started night school at Drury. Quit that later, and then I got in the jewelry business.
Okay.
And I was in the jewelry business for about 14 years, I think.
Okay. Did you work for a larger company, or
I worked for Zales Jewelers.
you did work for Zales?
Yeah.
Okay.
For 7 years. Then I worked for J.C. Penney's for about 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
And
In which towns did you work in?
Salina, Kansas,
Mm-hmm.
with Zales, and I managed that store. And then I became department manager for Penney's,
Uh-huh.
J.C. Penney, when they got into the jewelry business. And I did real well. I had number 2 store in Penney's,
Uh-huh.
and I had, sales was a little different. But I really enjoyed it, but I wanted out. I wanted to move back
Want
to
to come home?
Marshfield.
Was the penny store in Salina as well, Kansas?
Yeah, well, that's who got me the job.
Yeah.
The manager of the penny store in Salina, we were good friends, and he said, Penny's is trying to get in the jewelry business. So I got in, I was like, maybe the first store Penny's had a jewelry department.
Wow. Huh.
And then I got number 1 for a while.
Yeah. So I knew that you had got. I didn't know it until this week, and there's another fellow that sent me a message and said, "Now Tom was in the jewelry business and offered me a job and asked me to come out and be his assistant manager. Do you remember who that might have been?"
I know.
Bob Choate.
Really?
Uh-huh. Yeah. So I didn't know about your jewelry career, and he mentioned that, and I said, well, I'll mention that to Tom. So
Yeah, that's.
yeah, he
I
said,
didn't know Bob very well. He's
yeah,
a little younger.
yeah. But that's what he said when he got out of school. You offered him that position, but so you now in this period, is that when you met Linda then?
She worked in the jewelry store.
Okay.
So they had her married to me before I even
Okay.
got there.
Well, that worked out pretty good then,
Yeah,
didn't it?
yeah, she worked in the office.
Okay.
And I was out front, and I became an assistant manager of that
Uh-huh.
store
Yeah.
pretty quick.
That was in Salina?
Yeah.
Yeah. What?
That was in St. Joe.
Oh, okay. So you came back to St. Joe and worked.
I was in St. Joe,
Uh-huh.
got married, and became a store manager
I
in
see.
Salina.
Oh, I see.
So they
Okay.
transferred me to.
So you were in St. Joe first.
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
And then when I went to work for Hilliard, I was back in St. Joe,
Okay.
kind of.
Yeah.
And,
And that's where her family was from.
yes.
Yeah.
And she was.
Yeah.
She was just out of high school.
Uh-huh. That's neat. So then you guys decided to come back to Marshfield around when then? In the 70s?
Yes.
Sometime?
Yeah. Well, it's like, yeah.
Well, I guess was that the time that you had me draw your house plan for you?
Yeah, that's when I was moving back.
Yeah.
1978.
Yeah, I drew some house plans in those years.
Was you in high school?
I just out in 78. 77 is when I graduated. But
Okay.
I was drawing plans my senior year. I did quite a bit.
Yeah.
My dad was in United Savings and Loan, and so people would come in and they'd need a plan. They'd have something scratched out on a piece of paper and
Right.
and
Feel
he'd say,
real
well,
good.
if you need a good drawing, my son can do it. Oh yeah, so that's probably how you
It
found
is.
me. But of
Well,
course, we knew each
LR
other.
didn't care.
Huh?
LR didn't care.
L. Alexander, yeah.
Yeah, he would take anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
The banks wanted
well,
something
you did a good
usually.
job. I
Yeah.
think I've still got it.
Yeah, that's cool. I may have a copy myself. I've got a lot of those. But now, we knew your folks really well because they lived next door to my grandparents.
Yes.
George and Jean, wonderful people. Your mother was just a sweetheart. And of course, as a boy, we would play over there, me and Mike and Andy and Barth, and she was always so nice to us. And,
Oh, yeah.
And very, very
Thank
good
you.
friends of our family, of course. And
And then when Noel had the gas station,
Noel Thomas, yeah.
and that's where my dad bought his gas. He
Yes.
bought a lot of gas.
Yes.
Probably spent $12 every time he filled it up.
Yeah. Now he was traveling. Was he working for Hilliard by then, or just a
He was working for White Castle.
White Castle? Yeah, they were a supply company, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I went to work for Hilliard
Uh-huh.
in 79, I guess.
79.
Right after that.
That's pretty much who you went to work for when you moved back to Marshfield.
Yeah, I
then?
lived with Hilliard 41 years.
Wow, 41 years. So you came back to Marshfield, then you obviously had children, the boys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had two
Uh-huh.
when we moved here.
Okay, so they were
Jason.
actually in St. Joe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tommy was like third grade,
Gotcha. Okay.
and Jason was just barely a baby.
Baby. Okay. And got them in school, and then the ball games and all the activities started, and now your folks, they were already out of the cafe business by then, weren't
Yeah.
they? Because they were probably getting to be
Well,
retirement age.
I think they closed the Spur Cafe
Uh huh.
in the late '60s.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember it. Certainly remember it, and remember when they built the overpass. I guess they closed it when they built the overpass,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
That's why they.
Yeah.
did it.
Yeah.
I've got pictures.
Do you?
Yeah,
I'd love to get some copies sometime.
I'll
Down the
show
road.
it to you.
Yeah, down the road. That's really interesting. The Spur Cafe was just a wonderful place. I remember it very well. Typical roadside cafe, nice. Seemed like a nice dining room, pretty good sized.
Well, not today, but it
Back
was
then, it appeared. I remembered it, and they had gas there, right? Somebody sold gas there.
standard gas.
Yeah, and of course it was right where the overpass is. They had to tear it down to build it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But that's when we pumped the gas and washed the windshields and all that.
Did you work some there at
Yeah.
high school?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rode my bicycle out there.
Yes. Now your folks, had they already moved to there on Washington Street by that time, or when did they move there? They're by my grandparents. Or were you still on Maple Street?
No. We had moved to the Spur,
Uh huh.
and then when we left the Spur, we built that house, or bought that house.
Yes. Uh huh.
And
So you lived out at the Spur where the cafe was?
yes.
I see. Okay.
No. The Skyline.
Oh, at the Skyline.
Skyline.
Okay.
Yeah, there was 5 of us, and my mom and dad had a bed,
Uh huh.
and my brother and I had a bunk bed, and my sister had a baby bed.
Uh huh.
That's where she slept,
Uh huh. Wow.
and all in one room.
That was at the Skyline Cafe. Wow.
Yeah, a lot of memories there.
Absolutely.
Well, the
But that was that.
kitchen for the cafe
Uh huh.
was in next to our bedroom,
I see.
but we didn't stay open late.
Yeah. Huh. Whenever, do you have any, now when you were working for Hilliard, you traveled quite a bit. Did you travel beyond Missouri?
No, not too much.
Just Missouri pretty well?
I did when I was asked,
Yeah.
and
But you sold them cleaning supplies and floor finish and what have you, but then you also got in and helped them with the floors, right?
Yes.
As far as the gym floors in the summertime?
yeah,
That's a lot of work, wasn't it?
oh yeah. But I was smart enough to know not to do all the work.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah,
I was a good supervisor.
But you wanted to make sure it was done right, and that's why
why
you
I
had to
was
be
there,
there.
yeah.
Yeah. And that was important. I mean,
Oh, it was really important.
I tell you what, sports in the schools were, I mean, everybody, a lot of eyes, a lot of people watching, and if they'd have went into to a gym floor and it didn't look good or something, that would have been a reflection of you and your business, wouldn't it?
Yep. When the floor looked good, school looked good.
Exactly.
Superintendent looked good. Custodians looked good.
Yeah.
I looked good.
Yeah,
So we did try to do a good job.
sure.
But I traveled, I think, 37 counties and that's 37
Yeah,
schools
yeah.
plus 2 or 3 more each.
Sure.
So there's probably 100 total.
Right.
Right now we're covering more than that. It's Jason and Tom
Uh-huh.
Jr. is got their own company,
Sure.
so they're doing that on their own. It's a big deal.
I
They're
bet
doing
it
like
is.
140 gyms.
In the summer?
Right, in about 6 weeks. Right now.
Yeah. That is unbelievable. Wow. Do you have specific gyms that it comes to your mind as being really unique or really special, or is there anything that stands out to you out of all of the?
Well, when they asked me to do SMS's gym and Drury's gym, I knew I was pretty good.
Yeah. Now, was that McDonald Arena or would that have been
Yeah, no,
JQH?
the JQH.
JQH.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That wasn't very long ago.
Yeah.
And but my boss, one of the guys from Drury told my boss that he needs to work with me to learn how to do a gym floor.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I did. And my dad was good at that.
Mm-hmm.
Very particular. Didn't make mistakes.
Uh-huh.
You don't make mistakes. My boys know that. They don't. They're fast
Yes.
and they work fast and get a lot done. But
Well, Jason's helped us down there at the old gym there, several times, and I know they do a great job, and we sure appreciate what they've done to help us with
Well,
that gym floor.
and if you buy it, it can get expensive.
Absolutely.
But today they're putting their mascot on the floor,
Uh-huh.
doing extra things.
Extra stuff. And I'm sure that the finish itself is much better than it was back in
It
the
is.
early days, I'm sure.
Back then, you couldn't hardly stand to do it because of the fumes.
Oh, uh-huh.
But today there's a lot of water base,
Mm-hmm.
which is approved for most states today, like California and
Mm-hmm.
New York, and they're all approved to finish. So we sell a good product, and
I bet our old floor down there, and built in '54, is probably one of the older ones now that they do, I would imagine. I don't
Here?
know. Yeah.
yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I bet.
And I think it was Mac. That was his first game was at the new one.
Uh-huh. 54, yeah. See, Jerry Anderson missed it. He had already graduated
Yes,
and went on and certainly become a legend at MSU, of course,
That's
SMS then. But
I remember listening to the radio. And no TV back then,
right,
but you could hear it on the radio, and Jerry Anderson was playing.
yeah. And Anderson goes out of the court, like those old boys would do. That's great. Tell me about the Optimist Club. You're a longtime member. Were you a charter member? Well, I guess
No,
probably
no.
not, because you weren't living here yet, were
Well, I belonged to the Optimist Club in Salina.
you? You did. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I just transferred my membership here.
Sure.
And
Because I think we had Rick Siebert and Mark Birchfield on a few weeks
they've
ago.
been here a long time.
Yeah, they talked about the history, but of course, Matt Case, I think, is the only charter member.
He is.
And I think it was 1962, if I remember, is when it chartered.
That'd be about right.
Yeah. But as far as you would be right there behind him probably, and maybe Mark and Rick would be close to you.
I
But
think I was. Well, we were all there about the same
yeah,
time.
in the 70s, yeah.
I think Rick beat me, or I beat him about a year or two.
Yeah, yeah. What's the Optimist Club mean to you? What tell us about your time you've spent and what all you've done.
There's several things that the Optimist Creed is live by that. I live by that, and always will have. And the J.C. Penney's had a motto, and Sales had a motto, and I like that meant a lot to me when J.C. Penney said that. What was it, J.C.? The Golden Rule Store.
The Golden
was the
Rule.
name of J.C. Penney's
Uh-huh.
when I started, and or it was before I started when he started,
Right.
and I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because do unto others and you do unto them, and I lived by that.
Yeah.
And the Optimus Creed has a lot of good stuff in it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's cool. That's really neat. Now, J.C. Penney was from Missouri, and actually, his hometown wasn't far from St. Joe up there.
That's right.
Yeah.
Hamilton.
And he would have been still very active when you worked for the company, I'm
He
sure.
was.
Yeah.
He quit, I think, a year before I did.
He did.
Yeah. He retired.
Yeah. Of course, I worked for Walmart, and
That's right.
Mr. Walton, and he worked for J.C. Penney when he graduated from MU in Columbia. He went to MU.
Really?
Yeah, and while he worked in college, that's where he got his retail training, was in J.C. Penney store in Columbia, Missouri.
Well,
While
I
he was in
had
college.
heard
Yeah.
that Mr. Walton had the J.C. Penney handbook.
Yeah. Yes, I think that's
And
correct.
he lived with it.
Yes, to that.
He'd call them
Yes.
his employees associates.
Associates, yes.
Not employees.
Mm-hmm. And making them share in the information of the company. Now, I don't know, Penny's may not had a profit sharing like Walmart did in those later on, but certainly Sam Walton believed in sharing information, sales, and all kinds of things with the employee, make them buy in as partners, sort of. But he gave J.C. Penney a lot of credit for his principles that he built his company on in those early days.
He did.
Yeah, he really did. And he knew Mr. Penney very well, too, as he grew his company, and certainly they became friends. And
Well, I have a Golden Rule store of J.C. Penney.
Mm-hmm.
Gave it to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he was visiting our store, and
Mm-hmm.
I think all the managers got one.
Uh-huh. Neat.
I was the department manager,
Mm-hmm.
but I did get to shake his hand. And
That's cool. About maybe 10 years ago, I don't know, 15 or something, you came to me one day and you had something. I don't know if you remember this. It was a little red box. And your mother had the antique store in the old condo building up here.
yeah,
And I don't know if you called me or saw me or something and said, I've got something for you. I was going to bring it today and I forgot to, but it was a little red box. And what it was, when the Nato factory, we called it, Welch Manufacturing, was over here behind Carl Young's.
yes,
As kids, we would ride our bikes back in there, and they had a scrap pile, and they were okay with the boys getting scraps. Matter of fact, they told people to get those scraps and use them in their fireplaces for kindling.
yeah, oh yeah,
Cedar scraps.
smell good.
But there would be, or put them in a closet for clothing, moths and stuff.
Yeah,
But in those scraps, there would always be little boxes that they had already, put together, like their quality control people. This box has got a chip on it or something. You throw it out and it'd go in the pile, So we would go up there and you could get little boxes and stuff.
Really?
They wouldn't be perfect. And this one's, it's about the size of a glasses case or something.
yes,
And had little hinges on it. You opened it up, and I had one of those, and I'd painted it red, and I had my name on the bottom of it,
Really?
and it said Lyndall Fraker's Money Box. And as a boy, I kept coins in it, or dollar bills folded up. Well, somehow or another, and I would imagine it probably got sold in a garage sale, and I may have done it. I may have sold it in one of Mom's garage sales as a kid. It ended up in your mom's flea market.
okay,
And you found that, or you saw that one day and looked at it, and my name was on it, and you picked that up. Maybe you bought it from your mother, I don't know, in her flea market. But you called me and you gave me that box, and I have it.
really.
Isn't that a cool story?
Yes, it is.
And we're talking about the 60s is when that box would have
Right.
been, when I would have had it. And somehow or another, it made it through to your mother's flea market.
Yeah. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I should have brought it. I have it. Matter of fact, I looked for it to make sure I had it, and I was going to bring it. But anyway, that's just a neat little side story.
It is.
These stories are the kind of thing that we're trying to do, Tom. We're trying to capture the history of Marshfield and Webster County or Missouri or our lives, and so we can pass this history on down.
Yeah.
Someday your grandchildren maybe can watch this, and your great grandchildren. I know you've got a great granddaughter or daughter, right? They could watch
Alexis' daughter.
Yeah, Alexis' daughter. Yeah, they could watch this video and hear about your parents and the cafes and the story of when you were born, and that's what we're trying to do with this podcast. So I
got one little story.
Yes.
My dad, when we lived on Maple Street, my dad was young, sick, and they sent him to Mount Vernon to die.
Oh my!
And kind of like cancer patients.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, he got down to 98 pounds or something, and they slept outside if they could because of the odor.
Oh wow!
And anyway, Dad was down there, and he had worked on the railroad and got sick, and anyway, they put him in Mount Vernon, where this was.
Didn't they call that a chest hospital or something?
Yeah,
or
I think
seemed
so.
like
TB.
Yeah, TB. Yeah.
And anyway, they get him down there, and he liked to read Reader's Digest, little stories. And he was reading about this medicine that was been developed in Chicago by this lab about tuberculosis and TB and penicillin. Anyway, I think he asked his doctor if he could take this, and the doctor said, "Oh, that's just an experiment."
Yeah.
And Dad said, "What do I have to lose?"
Yeah.
I said,
Now, how old would he have been then?
He'd probably, I was maybe 4.
So young man, but grown, yeah.
New family.
Yeah.
Anyway, he said, "What do I have to lose?" So the doctor said, "Well, if you want to try it, go ahead." So my granddad had a barber shop in Marshfield.
I remember him, or his name. I don't remember him, but
Beetle Barnes.
Beetle Barnes. Yeah.
Edward Barnes.
Yep. Heard my folks talk about him.
Beetle Barnes. And he also was in the Rathman building in the basement.
In the basement, yeah.
But anyway, that was my granddad. Well, a pharmaceutical salesman would stop in and get a haircut. And that's where the doctor stuff come in. So my granddad ordered some of that to use.
Uh-huh.
So, and he asked his doctor down there if I could get this stuff, would you give it to me? Sure.
Yeah.
So he did.
Really?
But Dad said that this is the development of what do I want to say? Streptomycin.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
But that was the beginning of that.
Which followed penicillin. It came in later as a better. Yeah. That's interesting. That really is interesting.
And
that would have been. So the war would have probably just barely been over by then. Yeah.
Yes, I imagine.
Yeah. Did your dad serve, or was he?
No.
He didn't. Now, I have another question. So there was a Barnes family that was very, very instrumental in the development of Marshfield back in the late 1800s, and I think one of them, his initials may have been E.W., was a probate judge.
Yes.
Is that the same
Yes.
family? It is. Okay.
Yeah.
Would that have been Beetle's dad?
No, that would be my grandmother's dad.
Your grandmother's dad. Okay.
Caldwell is his name.
Caldwell. Okay. Well, there was a Barnes too.
He also was architect for the courthouse.
Oh, really?
and the Masonic Lodge. That all was about the same time. And he built the furniture and the woodwork in the new courthouse.
Okay, that's all oak, native oak.
Now.
Yeah.
And so,
It was built in 41.
yeah, that'd be right. Yeah,
And his name was Caldwell.
yeah.
That's not a real strong Webster County name, really.
No.
Not today, anyway. But the the Barnes family is. You can look at in those green history books that were done a few years ago.
Yeah.
There's a pretty good story in there about some of the Barneses in the late 1800s, and I think they came here from like Carthage or somewhere, Jasper County, and then
Should be.
I was kind of reading a little bit about it, but anyway, I was just curious if that was the same family.
Yes, we did he had in fact, this building's still up altogether on Maple Street. It's behind the house that they lived in.
Oh.
My great-granddad was a carpenter, and he had a carpenter shop behind their house.
Okay.
And I go down there, I'm talking even 4 years old.
Yeah.
Sawdust was a foot deep, and he'd make stuff back there and then take it up, put it in the courthouse.
Yeah.
Now that's my grandmother's dad.
Okay. That was Caldwell.
Caldwell.
Okay.
And Edward, or what'd you say a while ago?
E.W.
E.W. I've got a cane here with his
initials.
initial in it.
That was Beetle's dad.
No,
No.
he was Barnes. Beetle was the Barnes. This would have been my grandmother, who was.
Oh, I
Caldwell.
see. Well, no, the one I looked up was Barnes, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I've heard Beetle Barnes, and there was some. Let's see, Lawrence Young was a barber down there with him in the basement, and there was several. Was Mr. Abbott in there, or did he have a different? Bob Abbott's dad was a barber, I think, or I believe that's right. But there was. Heard my dad talk about some of those guys,
Yes,
down
your
there.
dad would know.
Yeah.
And I told Jason, I said, I'm too young for an interview like this. He said, you're not.
Well, we're all going to be there. We hope you. That's what I would always tell my dad. Dad, you beat the odds. You won. You won life. And
that's right.
I think we've had Tom Farr Jr., Ralph Todd Jr., Pat Abbott on, Don Roast, Leona. Don and Leona are both the same age. They're 92, I think.
Really?
Yeah, and they've. I mean,
Yeah,
it's just. And it is hard to believe that all these folks are at the ages they are now. But but you won in life. A lot of people didn't get that opportunity.
That's right.
And
76, I think, is average.
something like that. Yeah, it's not quite 80. I don't think women may be closer to 80, but
Yeah.
men's not. But and you get to. I'm 64, and you get to thinking about that stuff.
You'll be
and
64, and then you'll be 82.
I know it. I know that, and that's why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
I mean, strictly
Appreciate
for historical purposes, and to me, a one-on-one casual conversation is better than some kind of structured deal. I just let it start and let it flow.
Yeah.
Remember those stories that.
And there's probably more.
I know there is.
Yeah.
And I mean, I had Tom Jr. come back again because he continued to think of more stuff. We just had him back a second time,
Really?
And so
See,
now
he didn't tell me that.
huh?
He didn't tell
He
me.
didn't. Yeah. Oh no, Tom Farr Jr. Tom Farr.
Okay.
Yeah. Not your son.
Okay.
Tom Farr.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Tom Farr, I'm sure.
Yeah. With Tom Farr, I remember them.
Yeah.
His family and the
Yeah.
garage.
Yeah, that was his dad. But Tom's still very sharp, and
Yes,
Dr. Todd is too. Dr. Todd's, and I think they're all in their late 80s. Or Tom's 90. Tom's 94.
probably.
He was my dad's age. D. Lewis, we had him on, and he did a great job. But Pat
I remember.
Pat
D.
Abbott's
Lewis.
98, and she's
Is she really?
amazing. Yeah.
Beautiful woman.
Yes, she is. Always was.
D. Lewis had holes in the bottom of his shoe when he came to work here.
Oh, he did.
Yeah. He's 20 years old.
Yeah, yeah. He had a great story. You'll have to watch his sometime, his podcast.
Yeah.
But we've had a really good time with it, and really appreciate you doing this. I know you lost, of course, Linda a few years ago, and I know, to lose a long-time partner, that would be hard. And then you had a friend, Evelyn, I know,
Yeah.
across the street here, and great lady too. And,
Yes.
and I know they've
Honored to be her friend.
absolutely, and hated to hear that. When,
Yeah, I was lucky. I had two beautiful women
yes,
alive.
yes. Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And that's all we can ask for is to, have good friends and companions and so forth. One more thing, I want to talk about your grandkids and great-grandkids, and real quick. So, of course, Alexis, we know about her.
Lived in Costa Rica.
Yeah, that's a kind of an amazing story, isn't it?
It is.
and you've been down there. I've seen the pictures.
I've been 5 times.
5 times. Wow, something I've never done. Uh-huh.
Well, she's living life.
Yeah.
She really is.
Yeah.
And not the wildlife. I'm talking.
Right.
They go to church. They
Yeah,
do a lot of good things.
that's great.
And I couldn't have picked a better man for her.
That's great.
For me to say that,
Mm-hmm.
or say that about anybody.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, that is wonderful. Yeah.
She's a good woman.
And she's got a little girl.
Little girl
Yeah.
that's 3 years old.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm going to go down there again.
Are
I
you?
think in
Good.
March.
Good.
Or not March, May.
May. Uh-huh. And
Try
then,
to.
And then let's see. Now Tom's got how many children?
2.
2. Okay. Any great grands on that side yet?
Yes, 1.
Oh, 1. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
His name is Levi.
Uh-huh.
Looks like a Levi. Cute kid.
Yeah.
Really cute.
Yeah.
Real blessed.
Yeah. And Tom and Jason both work in the business.
Yep. Yeah. Jason has another business, American Gym Floor, and that's his by himself.
Yes. Uh-huh.
He hires Tommy to help him.
I see.
And
Yeah. And I think they've done some at the gym for us.
they do a wonderful job.
Yeah, they do.
I couldn't do better myself.
Mm-hmm. And then the fitness center that he's involved with, and I know you've been active there over the years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good deal.
Uh-huh.
They live it. They love it.
Well, they help keep people healthy, and
Yeah.
that's important.
Yes.
It's very important.
Yeah, Jason, that's a non-profit
Mm-hmm. Right.
business.
Right.
And I don't know how that works, but I guess it works okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all that equipment is his. It's bought and paid for.
Yeah.
And all the profits go back into it.
Mm-hmm.
So he keeps buying new furniture.
Right.
Equipment.
Yeah, they've done a lot with that. Absolutely. Logan, I guess our time's about up, isn't it? We got about 3 minutes. So, Tom, is there anything else you'd like to say to the folks? We have, we've been averaging about 100, in a week or so, usually around 100 have viewed. And then as time goes on, we've got some that we did back last summer that have over 500 views.
Really?
Yeah. It's kind of neat. And the more we have, then the more families that, discover it and know about it. And it's just history is all it is. And sometimes we know people, but we really don't know their story. And, everybody has a story.
That's
Everybody
right.
has a story. And generally they're interesting. They may not think that they are, but they are. It's interesting to hear about, when you were born and how they had to turn around because we didn't have telephones and we
No.
didn't have, and that kind of thing. And so.
And didn't think a thing about it. I mean,
Exactly.
it was.
Exactly.
And then honored to know Effie Eiler and
Mm-hmm.
Ralph Eiler and
Mm-hmm.
where Eiler Field came from, and
Mm-hmm.
it's history.
Right. Yeah, and all the friends that we gain in life, in our work or in our church or in our community or in school, and how amazing that is. That's like a quilt, all fitting together, and it all becomes part of our life. The memories and the stories.
It's kind of like belonging to the Optimist Club and the history it has.
Yes.
It's really good. They give away like $16,000 a year.
I know it. I learned that. See, when we talked to those guys, and they do a lot, predominantly for children in Marshfield,
it's all
the
children.
young youth, and that's just a wonderful thing. We talked about how those civic clubs started back in the early 1900s. A lot of them started, kind of a way to help communities because times were tough in the 30s, the Depression. And
like
they would pull together, and they didn't have other social outlets back then. You had church maybe, and that was about it. And they were able to come together and meet weekly or monthly and do things to help their communities. And it's a great thing.
Well, my great granddad, the one that I'll show you that cane.
Uh-huh.
But the history that it has, the Masonic Lodge.
Oh, yes.
And the leaders that it had, like Doc Glenn and some of these older guys.
We did a show on it, too. Champ Heron did it, and he did a great job with the history of the Masonic Lodge.
Champ is a Mason.
Yes.
But my great granddad, if you go in the lodge down there, there's a picture about this big. It's him.
Is that right?
I bet you there's nobody knows who he is.
That was Mr. Caldwell?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Wow. Yeah, see, I'd never heard of him, so now I learned something there today.
And where his shop was.
Uh-huh.
By the railroad track. Well, if you cross the railroad track there by the Dairy Queen.
Yes.
And second house on the right.
On the right. Okay.
It's where we lived.
Okay.
All the Maple Street kids.
Uh-huh.
And his shop was right out back. And it's still there.
Yeah.
So I can't go across that railroad track without
remember that every time.
And he would my dad worked on the railroad for a while. He'd take his dirty clothes and throw them off.
Yeah.
In that ditch behind our house.
Yeah.
And we, as kids, would go down there and get it. A mom would wash it and then have it clean on his way back to Fraker.
Yeah. Well, your mom and dad, as I said, lived next to my grandparents there on Jackson Street or Washington Street growing up. But I do have one quick story I got to tell about your dad. And so you probably have heard this. Maybe you haven't. It's funny today. It probably wasn't very funny at the time. So one Halloween, probably in the late 70s, I believe it was a Halloween, your dad had those fiberglass figures from the Bigwig.
That's
Remember
right.
that? The Burger family, right?
Yeah.
Papa Burger, Mama Burger. Yeah. Well, of course, as boys would be boys in those days, I didn't do it, but I might have saw what happened.
And you were that age.
But the Burger family was behind your dad's little barn there by my grandma's, and some boys got the idea that they would go get those figurines and haul them out to the overpass and set them up on the overpass.
It did. Or they were on their way out.
Yeah. They set them up there, and of course, they wasn't very long. Here come the sirens, and they all the volunteer fire department in those days, and the local police, whoever was working back in those, wasn't very many back then, but they were bound and determined they were going to have to find out who put them out there. Of course, nobody would tell on them, But that's just kind of a funny story that associate with your dad when I hear his name, because he owned those figures. But
well, he went out there and waited for him or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is the rest of the story.
Yeah. See, I don't know all that story.
He had a cane.
Yeah.
And
he would have been getting up there probably by that time in age.
He was 70.
Yeah.
Anyway, he drove out there and he took his cane like a rifle.
Yeah.
And said, "You boys, you drop that stuff down. I'm going to blow your head off." And they did.
That may have been.
Them all back.
That may have been. Yeah. Yeah,
That's the rest of the story.
that's the rest of the story. That's funny.
I wasn't living here then.
Yeah. No, it probably would have been right before you moved back because, see, I graduated in 77. This would have probably been 76 or something like that. And then another thing I was going to ask you too, your mom was it a niece that lived with them for a while?
Yes.
Yeah, because see, we would play out in the yard, and her name was Sharon. Yeah, she would come over and play. We'd play and swing. They had a big swing back there.
Well, they raised her.
I see. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Her dad was in the Air Force, I think.
Uh-huh.
And came by here one time and just dropped her off and left.
Is that right?
And,
wow. I never knew the story. I just remember.
Well, I saw her about a month ago, and she calls me sometimes.
Yeah.
And I met her someplace for lunch.
Oh, well, that's neat.
Yeah, we're still talking.
Really?
Kitty. She came up to see Kitty.
Yeah.
Kitty's in a nursing home.
You told me that, yeah. Where does Sharon live?
Harrison, Arkansas.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Smart girl.
Yeah.
Very smart.
Well, that's great.
She was a reader. She read all the time.
Did she have family or anything? Kids? Yeah.
And they weren't very good to raise.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you ever talk to her again, ask her if she remembers the Fraker boys.
Okay.
I'm sure she will.
Yeah.
Swinging there on the swing and
yeah. She
that's
lived
interesting.
with them for, I don't know, maybe 6 years.
Yeah. Yeah, it seemed like she maybe during even high school maybe.
Yeah.
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 Well, Tom, it's 2:05. I think it's probably time. We've been about an hour, and time goes by pretty fast, doesn't it?
Yes. I hope I was okay.
You'll be just fine. It was great. This is exactly what we want to do. And
Well, I've got Parkinson's.
oh, you do?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know that.
And it affects your voice.
Well,
I didn't know that, but it
yeah.
does. And
well,
sometimes I shake a little.
looks like you're getting along awful well from your health issues. And,
I want to get back to
yeah.
where I was.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to be able to walk.
Yeah. Yeah. I bet you will. Well, I appreciate this very much. Logan puts a link on this so you can go to YouTube and look at it. And before we leave, we can show you how to do that real quick. But that's it for this week. We'll see you all next week. Thanks, Tom. We'll see you soon.
Thank you,
and everybody.